everyone, and welcome to this week's Blabbit. For those of you who may not have been here before, Blabbit brings professional experts in their fields in so we can pick their brain without a charge. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll be happy to use those with our expert. For anyone that's not been here before, my name is Glenn Ingram. I've been working in coaching, mentoring, and helping people with sales skills for the better part of the last 2 decades. But it's kind of interesting to be able to be a better talker. You have to be a better listener. Hey, Paul, how are you?
I like the way that works, Glenn. I really do. And I've seen it work. So we know for sure that it does. Hello, everybody. First timers, returning blabbies. Good to have you guys aboard. My name is Paul Geiger. I am a public speaking coach and presentation expert out of the New York City area. And I help individuals and I help organizations really clarify their messaging, get over any of those speaking obstacles that might be sabotaging the clarity of that messaging, and making sure that they're connecting and resonating with the people who they want to have listen to them. Amy, please tell everyone just a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for this opportunity to chat with everyone today. Amy Geffen, I'm a career coach. I am not a hunter, I'm not a recruiter. I'll get to what I actually do in a moment. My background is over 30 years of work experience as a teacher of English as a second language, then as a college administrator in continuing education, distance learning, online learning, which I started in 1995 with Lotus Notes. I'm not ashamed to say it. And then as an administrator in not-for-profit associations, always in education, professional development, and distance learning. I worked with engineers at the American Society of Mechanical Engineers on their courses to translate their live courses into online learning using Blackboard from 2000 to 2004. So what do I do as a career coach? I help people find a job. They may be employed but unhappy in their employment. Or they may have been doing something for 20, 30 years and say, gee, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do something else, but I don't know what that is. I help people who are underemployed. Maybe they were laid off during COVID and they found a job as a cashier at CVS or Trader Joe's, but obviously that's not what they want to do with their lives. Or maybe they are unemployed and they've been answering ads on the internet and wondering, how come I'm not getting interviews? Nobody's responding to me. So what do I do as a career coach? I use a 5-step method that many outplacement services use. I have private clients. I work with outplacement companies. And this is the method. Assessment. What are your skills? What are your interests? What are your values in the workplace? Do you want to work for profit, not for profit? Advocacy. And then I help the person target what is the job or job targets that make sense for you as an individual based upon your skills and your interests. Yes, there are thousands of jobs out there and there are millions of people looking for jobs, but is there a match between your skill set and what they're looking for? 2, branding, personal branding. Everyone knows that a company has a logo and a brand and brochures and a website. Well, you as an individual candidate looking for a job have to brand yourself. What does that mean? I help you with writing your pitch, your cover letters, your resume, your LinkedIn profile, how to follow up. 3, connecting with people. Most people, over 60% of people actually get jobs through connections, through their network and building their network. And I coach people in how to build their network. 4th, differentiating yourself from other candidates. I help people prepare for the interview situation. Oh my goodness, what questions can you expect? How do you answer them? What if you've lost a job? How do you talk about that? And then the follow-up, enhancing your candidacy. What happens after you have an interview? Is it just a thank you note? No, it's more than just a thank you note. So I coach people in what do you say to each of the people who interviewed you in an email afterwards? How do you follow up? How often do you follow up? How do you stay in touch with people? What happens if you get an offer? How do you negotiate your salary and your compensation, which is really important nowadays? It's not just the salary, it's all the other benefits that you may get as part of the job. So that's what I do. I'm happy to be here today and to answer the questions that you may have about job search, resumes, LinkedIn profiles, anything you can think of.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff you do there, Amy, and we appreciate you putting it all together in a concise form. Glenn, do you want to start to unpack?
Let's do it. Let's start from the beginning, if you will. When you have 50, 100, 200 resumes sitting on someone's desk, an HR person looking at them before they determine who they're going to pass along, what in 2022 do you recommend for a resume to make it stand out and to give it someone the reason to look at it maybe more than once and to pass it along?
That's a great question. Most hiring managers or HR people or recruiters spend 7 to 10 seconds on a resume before they even decide to read the whole thing, let alone throw it in the waste paper basket. So, how do you want your resume to stand out? Number one, the job title at the top of the resume is not your current job title or your most recent job title. It's the title of the job that you're going for right now. Even if it's different, that's the title you put on the resume. Second, accomplishments. The top of your resume, you need to choose 3 to 5 accomplishments from previous jobs. Doesn't have to be the most recent job. Could have been a job you did a few years ago. 3 accomplishments that are relevant to the job you are going for now. And how do you write your accomplishments? This is very important because you need to understand what the process is. It's called PAR by some people, or SOAR, SOAR. P stands for problem. What is the problem that you had to solve? A stands for action. What is the action, or what are the actions that you took to solve this problem for a company? R stands for results. What were the results that you achieved? It's not enough to say you were successful. What does success look like? Did you save money? Did you earn money? Did you increase the number of clients? Did you increase viewership or readership? How many programs? How many events? So on your resume at the top, before you even write about your jobs, you're putting in 3 to 5 accomplishments that show results that are relevant to this current position. Then the next thing, skills. What are the key skills that they're looking for in this job? And you can pull those skills directly from the job description, as long as you can do those skills. I never recommend someone putting something in their resume that's not true, because you're going to be called on it. They'll find out soon enough. So what are your key skills? Is it organizing? Is it management, data analysis, financial analysis, coding, writing, editing? You can have 6 to 12 skills beneath your accomplishments on your resume. So those are the 3 key places on your resume at the top third or top half of the first page of your resume: job title, accomplishments, and skills. And then under skills, you can say what you are known for, which are your softer skills. Known for problem solving, collaboration, flexibility, thinking out of the box. Things that are really not harder skills. They are personal characteristics or traits that an employer might be looking for. Then the rest of your resume is your job descriptions in reverse chronological order: name of company, name of job title, years, and again, accomplishments. So yes, the 3 to 5 accomplishments that you have put at the top of the first page will also be repeated under the jobs you had whenever they were. It could be last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, doesn't matter. Things that you do not include on your resume, and this is important because things have changed over the years. We don't write objectives anymore. Forget that. Take out the objective. We don't put in our street address. Yes, you can put in your city and state, but we don't put in street addresses. Why? Because there could be bias against where you live. That's just leave it at that. And you don't put in a photograph. Yes, on your LinkedIn profile, you should have a photograph, a professional photograph, not a selfie, but not on your resume. That depends, of course, the country. Some countries, people do put on photographs, but if it's international, it varies from country to country. References. You don't put your reference. Years ago, you had to have your 3 references at the end of the resume, you know, the names of the people and their phone numbers. No, you don't put references. When that time comes during the interview process and they ask you for your references, then you can contact them and let them know they're going to be approached. And then you can give the names and the phone numbers to the person who's interviewing you.
Let me ask you a quick question, Amy. When you say accomplishments, is the advice to make sure that there are some hard numbers in there? Isn't that something
Absolutely.
that usually people avoid, or they don't have a way of quantifying exactly what it is that they do? But isn't that a really good discipline to follow?
Absolutely. Totally agree. In your results, try to use real numbers or a guesstimate, a best guess of the number.
Yeah.
The dollars that you increased, or if you're a fundraiser, how much money did you raise? Or if the number isn't that high, then maybe a percentage. So if you went from, 10 grand to 20 grand, so you increased it by 100%. So
Sure.
yes, as accurate as you can be. And with a lot of my clients is, of course, they don't have those numbers. They've left a job. They don't have the paperwork. They can't remember the numbers. So here's some advice. When you start a job, start a journal, whether it's handwritten or it's online, and write down what your accomplishments are and what are the numbers or dollars or percentages involved, so that when the time comes for your review in 6 months or a year, for your update of your resume, for your next interview, you will not only have a description of this accomplishment, you will also have the results in terms of numbers, dollars, or percents. Now, granted, not every job can be translated into dollars or numbers or percents. Number of people in education say, well, I'm in education. I can't put in dollars or percents. I said, well, you can say how many programs you ran, how many people attended the programs, what is the rating scale that they gave the teachers or the facilitators. So in some places, you can figure that out. Otherwise, you need to qualify your results. Completed this project under budget, completed this project in under 3 months, so that the person reading it gets a sense of how successful you are.
So you got to pay attention. You got to make sure, where are your numbers? Because it's so easy to think of a resume as being a narrative, being storytelling, but it's not. You say the storytelling for the interview. That's when you're determining culture fit, but you got to have some numbers, whether it's time, percentages, guesstimates on revenue increase, whatever that might be. Where are your numbers?
Absolutely. It's extremely important. And you know what? The numbers pop out. When this hiring manager or this recruiter is looking at the resume, the numbers, the percentages pop out. And that's important. And you can also use bold. For some of your accomplishments, you can bold 3 or 4 or 5 words, not the whole sentence, because that's too much, but pick 3 or 4 words to bold.
Hey, Glenn, I have a quick question for you. You know how much in sales and marketing we're using artificial intelligence these days. I'm interested to find out how much AI creeps into the whole resume, determining whether a resume makes it to the next step. How much is it keyword based? How much AI has become a part of the recruiting and hiring system?
I'd be surprised if much of it was. I mean, AI is something that people like to talk about. It's a big buzzword. We're really just kind of scratching the surface of AI a little bit. But I think to what she was saying, to quote Eddie Murphy from his live show back in, I think it was 78, you need an eye catcher. You've got to catch someone's eye real quick. So those little things to stand out for the numbers, the bold things and stuff like that. I know when you're trying to do something from a sales standpoint, you got a few seconds to catch someone's eye to earn the right for them to read the next portion, So I look at a resume the same way as you would do a sales letter, the same way you would do a sales email, is you have to keep earning that opportunity to go to the next step.
I'd like to add something to that about artificial intelligence. Any company that is posting jobs, be it on Indeed, Idealist, Monster.com, ZipRecruiter, or using their own website to post jobs, They're all using AI, artificial intelligence. And what does that mean for the candidate, for the person who's seeking the job? It means that your resume needs to compare favorably 85 to 90% with what's in the job description. If it does not match to the job description with keywords and phrases and what they're looking for in terms of education, experience, etc., no human being is going to look at it, because the artificial intelligence system, it's called ATS, Applicant Tracking System, will knock you out. You don't have a chance in anything to get seen. So my advice to people who are looking for a job, yes, you can answer ads online, but don't spend more than 10% of your time that way, because fewer than 10% of job applicants actually get the job by answering an ad online. And the second piece of advice I would give is this. When you answer an ad online, you must also find out the name of a hiring manager, not human resources, but someone in the department where you are going to work. Find out the name, their email, and send that person a cover letter, just like you did online, and your resume. So at least you know a human being is looking at it. That's my advice for artificial intelligence. It's all over, and it's not a good thing for the candidate.
Well, I think I would refer to that as artificial unintelligence, because again, you're not going to get to meet people like that. And so that makes sense for some people that I've heard. Paul, you asked someone who hasn't applied for a job in 20 years, so it's kind of hard to answer that part of it from my aspect. But from people I've heard, they never get responses back. And that's because they probably have one resume. They don't customize the resume to it. So yeah, I would say for a lot of those places, the juice isn't worth the squeeze.
And you know what? That's a really good point, Glenn, because I know so many individuals over the years, and to be honest with you, I know the feeling myself that, geez, I'm just submitting another resume. I'm just doing this. I'm just doing that. If they're not going to bother, why should I bother? But what Amy was just telling us is every single job is unique. So you've got to make sure that the title that you're going for matches perfectly. What would you say would be a good amount of keywords to harvest out of the posting, Amy? What would you say? 20, 30 words, maybe? Is that too much?
It's as many words as you can actually say that, yeah, I can do that, or I've done that. The phrases in the words. I don't know of a percentage. All I'm saying is that I have access to a syncing application. I can put in my clients' resumes and put in the job description, and it will automatically match it and tell us, oh, you're missing this, this, and this in terms of hard skills, or you're missing these soft skills, or you're missing this education. So again, it's got to be 85 to 90% matching with what the job description says. That's why it's just not worth all your time, because you've got to tailor your resume exactly to this job. How many times a day can you do that?
Yeah. And what would you say?
I have software I can do that real quickly.
What would you say are some of the categories, for anyone who maybe doesn't have access to this software and is just sort of doing it grassroots? What are some of the top categories of soft skills that need to be included in? I believe you said it was section 3. What are they?
Things like responsibility, flexibility, creativity, innovation, thinking out of the box, collaboration, soft skills, personal qualities. If you were to ask a good friend or a colleague, so, how would you describe me in 3 words, not the hard skills, but in 3 words, what are those 3 words? And then keep adding to that list of softer skills.
And isn't that a good rule of thumb to follow, Glenn, when you're doing branding? Isn't it? I mean, when you're just getting started, personal branding, ask friends and family, give me 3 words that describe me, and then fashion the best responses into your branding.
Well, I think that's why big businesses usually do to determine how they want to sell something.
That's true.
Yeah.
Good. So let me ask you a really quick question about what's some of the really general advice that you would give to individuals who have made it to the next step and, whoa, they've got an interview coming up. First interview, and I know it changes, second, third. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about that best practices in a very general sense.
Yes. Nowadays, people are getting 3 and 4 interviews before they actually get an offer. The first interview is generally called the screening interview. That may be done by a human resource person. It may not even be the hiring manager because, again, the human resource person is acting as a gatekeeper and wants to find out some basic information. Or the screening interview may be done by a recruiter, once again, who has been hired by a company to find a perfect candidate. So what can you expect in a screening interview? Basic questions. What do you know about this company? Why do you want to work for this company? Why should we hire you? What's your strength? What's your weakness? Give me an example of how you got along with your boss or how you didn't get along with your boss. So, I mean, the first screening interview is generally just to see, who are you? Do you have any interest in us? Do we have any interest in you? They also might bring up salary. Now, this is key. Often, salary is brought up in the first interview. Why? Because they don't want to waste their time with a candidate if they think the candidate wants too much money, or if they think the candidate is too low level and is asking for too little money, that there's something wrong there. They're really not the level we're looking for. Mm-hmm. And I do webinars just on salary negotiation, and we don't have enough time here today to go through the whole thing. But the key advice is for that first screening interview, you say, I'm more interested in the job. I know you'll be fair. Let's table that discussion, because you want to avoid the discussion of salary at the beginning. You want to learn more about the job, and you want the interviewer to learn more about you before you get to the point of salary negotiation. So that's the first one. It's a screening interview. If they have boxes they want to check off, if they can check off a few boxes, great. Then they'll send you to the second interview, which is usually with the hiring manager. That interview, the hiring manager may ask more detailed questions about specifics. If it's in sales or if it's in technology, they want to know if you know your subject matter and how have you accomplished your goals in that field. So you need to be prepared with your stories of your accomplishments, your PARs, to talk about that. It's not enough, as you know, to say, oh, I'm a successful salesperson. So what does that mean? You can't use the word successful. You have to prove it with an illustration. You can't say, oh, I'm an innovative thinker. Yeah, well, prove it. Give me an illustration. So it's very important to avoid buzzwords and avoid generalities and come up with stories. What I recommend to all my clients is to come up with 3 to 5 accomplishment stories that we practice, that sound conversational, that you can use in response to questions that you are asked by the interviewer. So you can say, oh, yes, I have some examples I can show you. This is what I've done recently. And you tell the story of something. And then after the question that you've answered, it's good to keep the conversation going with the interviewer by asking him or her a question. Most candidates don't do that. It's question, answer, quiet, dead space. It's important to act as though you're a consultant already working for the company by asking a question that will give you more information and insight into what are their challenges. What's the next project that's coming up? What do they have problems with now? What do they need help with now? So that you move the conversation forward, and in their answer, you will learn more about the company.
And I tell people that all the time, because the dynamic is already set. You're already being brought in for an interview. You are coming in so we can question you. And it's almost counterintuitive to ask questions at that point. I'm sorry, Glenn, what were you going to ask?
I was going to say the same thing. I'm interviewing them because I want to know about them if I want to accept a position, if it's being extended. So if you're not doing that, and if you're applying, especially for a sales position, and you don't ask me questions, you're not getting another interview. If you're doing some type of mid to upper level management and you're not taking that initiative to show me what you can do, you're not getting another interview. You're dead.
Now, speaking about things that seem counterintuitive in that interview process, or in really being able to speak about yourself, what about that sense of apologizing for things that maybe did occur or didn't occur in your career? In other words, I'm referring specifically to gaps in employment for whatever reason. And I'm sure you can detail what some of those reasons would be for us, Amy. But how do you bridge that? How do you feel good? And how do you come across as being confident in conversation when talking about that subject?
That's a great question, because we all have had gaps for whatever reason. Either we were fired and we were out of work, or a family member was ill and we took off time to take care of a family member, or we had young children, so we took off time to take care of the children. So this is what I would tell people. When you have a gap in your resume, and this is, of course, hindsight, you need to be doing something other than working, if that's the only thing you're thinking of during that gap. Maybe you were taking a course or getting a certification. Maybe you can say, I was taking care of the health of a family member. I mean, that's an acceptable thing if it's not too long, over too long a period of time. If you've been laid off, okay, you can say there was a reorganization. There was re-engineering. It wasn't because of my performance. It was because they had fewer clients and they needed to reduce the staff. I work with my clients to figure out what's a plausible answer, a truthful answer, so that they can get over that. As well, you may want to find some answers to the question of, well, let's say they are called behavioral questions. Tell me about a time when you did not reach your goal, or you did not meet your minimum, or you did not get along with someone. So these are called behavioral questions. And really what the interviewer is looking for is, how did you respond to that situation? How did you communicate? And what did you learn from that mistake?
Mm-hmm.
And how would you do it differently in the future? We all make mistakes. We all miss some of our goals and miss our targets. No one's making their targets all the time. Good for them if they do. But most of us, every once in a while, have a miss. What did you learn from the situation? How are you going to improve things later? That's what's important in terms of those types of questions.
And in terms of tone, when you're talking about that, I'm assuming you don't want it to be, you don't want to fluff it off as if the question has no real bearing on anything. And you also don't want to make it seem too dramatic or too traumatic that it actually occurred. So tone, as I'm sure you're aware because you do interview skills, is a huge part of getting a message across. Body language is even bigger than tone, but here we're talking about how do you deliver those words with the right intent and ultimately, ideally, with the right reception.
Absolutely. And that's another part of interview preparation. It's not only what you say, it's how you say it. How do you come across? Do you sound conversational? Do you sound confident? Do you sound like someone we want to hire for this position? Are you comfortable in unusual situations? So yes, I agree with you, Paul. That is a very important piece of how we communicate. What is shown on our face, in our body language, and our voice tone is equally as important as what we say.
Now, Glenn, in your interview process, in your hiring of sales teams, have you ever run into anybody who actually seemed like they were too confident? I mean,
No.
notwithstanding.
Salespeople that are too confident, never.
Because it goes back to tone too. And I can understand people going into an interview and really sort of pumping up their confidence. Like, I really want to get this job. And there's this whole dynamic of wanting to impress. But we all know what it feels like when we're with somebody who is lacking confidence. Yes. We also know the other end of the spectrum, somebody who has too much. So that balance is an interesting one.
It's fine to have confidence, but where I've seen this more often than not, the bark officer would like to go somewhere else. What I've seen more often than not is when you have young people that have enthusiasm, that have confidence, but don't have experience. But I've tried to explain to them, settle down, young one. I appreciate the confidence, but don't tell me you're going to be better than the top salesperson in here when you haven't sold anything.
Right. It's good to believe. It's good to believe in yourself, but A little self-deprecation.
Mhm.
It can be a part of the mix, right, Amy?
Yeah, sometimes it's called humble bragging. You want to show some humility. Certainly, if you have less experience, you want to show that you are willing and open to learn from others in the organization or on your team. That's very important. We can all learn things. Often, there is bias, age bias, other kinds of bias, because you feel, well, and you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, if someone is in mid-career and they're moving into another company with another group of people, they're still going to have to learn some things. What's the current company culture? How do I get along with this one and with that one? So I think it's important to show that you are open and willing to learn new things and work with different kinds of people.
Yeah, it's a big difference to say I'm going to outwork somebody than saying I'm going to do better than they are.
Interesting choice of words.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you a question about doing your due diligence, doing your search, doing your pre-game, let's say, search on a company. Are there places you can look to actually receive a little bit of under the table information about culture? In other words, that's important. I always say the interview process really is the company determining whether you can be a good culture fit. But it goes, the door swings in both directions. You want to know that that company has the right culture fit for you. Is there anything you can do in terms of the search, looking on websites, checking profiles? Is there any approach that you use to get a little bit of insight into culture?
Yes, I recommend that clients do a lot of research before they get to the interview. So that start with the company's own website. Fine. That's the professional brand. What is their mission? What is their history? Read their annual report. You may find out some things in the annual report that are positive or negative. Read some of the press release. Now, that, of course, is put out by the company, so usually it's very positive, but that will give you a sense of who they are and where they're going and what they value. And then you want to go to their LinkedIn profile. Most companies now also have a LinkedIn profile, and you can take a look at that. The other thing to do is look up the names of the people who will be interviewing you. And if you don't know, you need to ask before you get there, who will be interviewing me? And look at those people's LinkedIn profiles. Find out as much as you can about each of these individuals. How long have they been at this company? Where did they work before they came to this company? Where did they go to school? If you're lucky, maybe you have something in common. Maybe you both went to the same college. That would be helpful, but not necessary. And then, of course, the one other place, among other places, is Glassdoor. Now, people are writing comments on Glassdoor, positive and negative. And so you can find out some information that you may or may not be happy with on Glassdoor. Give me an example of a recent client who looked on Glassdoor. She had an interview, she looked on Glassdoor, and she saw some negative comments. Well, she made the mistake, she didn't ask me in advance, she made the mistake at the interview of saying to the interviewer, oh, well, I saw this negative comment on Glassdoor. Well, of course, she didn't get a call back. I said, well, that's a learning experience. You may find out negative things, but you don't want to bring those up during the interview process. It will help you in your decision as to whether, do I want to work for this company or don't I want to work for this company?
Yeah, but shouldn't everything that is posted online be taken with a grain of salt? Because isn't the internet like the great complaining tote board?
Absolutely.
It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the best way is if you know someone in the company, or if you can network through your own network of connections and see if anybody works at that company, or they know someone who works at the company, or you can also do a search on LinkedIn for alumni from your college or university or even high school. Where do they work and what companies they work in? And you may actually find alumni who work in the company where you are interviewing. You may not know those people. Maybe they graduated 5 or 10 years before you or after you. You can ask to connect to that person on LinkedIn as an alum. Alumni are much more open to connecting to strangers on LinkedIn. You know, we all get tons of requests, and I say delete, you know, ignore. But if it's an alum from my school, any one of my schools, I went to 3 colleges, then I'm more apt to accept the connection. Then once you're connected, you can ask for a little chat, a 10-minute chat, and then you can find out the inside scoop. Obviously, that's the best way. Someone who you can talk to who works in the company will give you the scoop.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you mentioned LinkedIn a couple times. I know from a business aspect, I give people a polite spanking occasionally about how poorly their LinkedIn is organized. But really, that's your online resume if you're looking for a job.
Yes.
So what do you go through and how do you help people have a LinkedIn profile that makes them appealing instead of saying, did you do this or did your 7-year-old?
Excellent. That's a great question because people don't know how to write their LinkedIn profiles, or they think it's just the same as their resume. And nothing could be further from the truth. You can change your resume for every job, but you only have one LinkedIn profile. And you have a lot of real estate, I like to say, space, literal space to write things. So, and I just did that with a client this morning. Went over her LinkedIn profile. Under your heading, she had what she does. I said, well, under the heading has 220 characters under your name. That's a lot of space. You can put in not only your current job title, former job titles, keywords, key skills, okay? What have you done? What can you do? Is it advocacy? Is it marketing? Is it membership? Whatever. That's very important. Again, here's an opportunity to add keywords. And then I show people my LinkedIn and she said, oh, you have so much under there. I said, yes, I'm taking advantage of the 220 characters in the headline. I want to put in as much information as will fit. Second piece is the about section. Unlike the resume, which is in third person, it's very formal. The LinkedIn profile recommends that you write something with I, first person. What are you passionate about? I am passionate about making computers dance. I can write a program for anything. I am passionate about always learning and continuing your education. You need a short paragraph about your passions. Then you can follow with some deeper descriptions, illustrations of these PAR stories that we talked about, with much more information than what you can put into your resume. In the about section, you have 2,000 characters. What does that mean? It's equivalent to about 1 page of single space typing. That's a lot of real estate. Once again, here you have an opportunity to show and highlight your best features. What can you do for a company? Talk about some specific activities, projects, accomplishments in detail. There's a lot of space there. This is your opportunity to include your results in terms of dollars, numbers, percents. This is your opportunity to include more keywords, key skills. And so I spend a lot of time with my clients, either writing it for them or showing them how to write this part. The about section is very important. Client this morning said, well, do people even read it? I said, well, if they get to you on LinkedIn, you bet they're going to read it because it has much more information about you than your resume.
But what about social proof? What about things like recommendations? Is that so far down in the profile that it doesn't matter, or it does?
Recommendations are super important. They're more important than the check off of the endorsements of skills. Anybody can check off a skill. They don't even have to know you, and they can check off a skill. So I would treat the skills with a grain of salt. The recommendations are very, very important. You need 3 to 4 recommendations or more if you can get them from current or former managers of yours, direct supervisors, direct reports, colleagues. Doesn't have to just be someone above you. It could be someone on your level, someone on a team that you work with in a different department, or someone who reported to you. You need to be connected to that person on LinkedIn, first of all, and then request your recommendation. What I suggest to my clients is this. Before you even ask for the recommendation on LinkedIn, contact this person. Give them a phone call or an email and say, I'm in a job transition. We work together on such and such at such and such a company. I'd love for you to write me a recommendation. I'll be happy to proofread it. Why? You would like to see this recommendation before it goes up online, because you're not the one who is uploading it. The person writing it is the person who has to upload it. So you will never get to see it until it's up there, unless you say, I'd be happy. I know you're busy. I'd be happy to proofread it for you. Then you get to see it before it goes online.
But don't you have to approve it? I believe you have to approve it.
You
So,
do.
I mean, I've actually asked people to
Change it.
to
Okay.
change it at that point. But is there a balance between giving and receiving? Because I notice, and Glenn, I know you've been through, we've talked about this. When you give somebody a recommendation, there's usually a bit of an impetus for them to return the favor.
Yes.
But does it matter?
Could
I mean,
be.
I've given a lot and I've received a lot.
And they're not always from the same people.
No.
So that's fine. Yeah, I think it's great. It's important to write recommendations for other people as well, to show that you're willing and open to do it. And it may not be a mutual thing. I mean, if I have clients who write recommendations for me, I can't write recommendations for them because they haven't worked for me. I don't know their work except to the extent that I can write a resume about them. Yeah. So yes, I think it's important to give as well as get. That's what this whole networking and connecting and building relationships is all about. You give some, you get some. You give referrals, you get referrals. That's a very important point. Thank you.
Well, and I'm curious to know what you think about this. Part of my 2,000 words, I would recommend to somebody that has a little bit about you that's not work related, because we aren't what we do. That's not who we are. So if you're doing something, and if you're engaged in nonprofits, if you're doing something to coach young children and stuff like this, I think A, that shows a little bit of your character, and B, you have a chance to have maybe a third or fourth or fifth part people connection. It's like, oh, I know someone that was there, and maybe now all of a sudden they're calling their cousin because their cousin's children go to the same school. Hey, do you know Paul? Can you tell me a little bit about them?
Excellent point. Again, that's something you would not put into a resume, but you can put some personal information into your LinkedIn profile. And it does. It sparks connections with people. You never know how you're going to be connected.
Let's go back to catching people's eye. You had mentioned earlier, Amy, that in your LinkedIn profile, you should have a good headshot, not just a quick selfie, something that really is the majority of the picture is your face. So people get a good look at you, because it is just a little circle thumbnail. What about the cover? What about the banner that goes across there? What goes in that? I mean, you see people who leave it light blue or swirling blue colors. Some people put the ocean, but that's wonderful and everything. But isn't it a professional profile? Shouldn't there be some connectivity between images and the work that you do?
It would be helpful if you can find an image that relates to what you do in some way, shape, or form, whether it's IT or it's sales or it's people. If you're managing people and you've got people, at a desk at a meeting or something, I agree with you. If you can find an image, a free image, of course, online, there's millions of images. Find something that is related to what you do. That's the best thing. The image that I happen to have picked for my LinkedIn is not particularly relatable. I picked it because it was a nice image that had a lot of blank space in it, big sky, so I could put some words in there because I wanted to put words in it about my 5-step process. That's something different. But yes, I would agree. You don't want the same old thing that gets put up there by default because you didn't take the time to look for something.
Yes.
And for anyone on a limited budget, if you Google what size should this banner be and go to places like PIXLR, it's a free version of Photoshop. You can create your own one there. It doesn't have to cost you any money, just a few moments of your time, and it can definitely help you set yourself apart.
And make sure it's the right size. I mean, that's really your point. Make sure that you don't have a picture that looks like this.
And maybe not all the text over on the left-hand side where your headshot's going to cover it up.
Right.
Use a little common sense.
There you go.
Nice plan. All right. So just going back for a moment. Well, no, actually, let me start at the end and then go back. You touched a little bit on the follow-up after an interview? Aha. Give us a nugget or two in
Yes.
regard to that, Amy.
Follow-up is extremely important. Most of my clients, before they get to me, say, oh yeah, I sent a thank you. Okay, a thank you is not enough. What your follow-up email should be, and it should be sent within 24 hours of your meeting, whether it's just an informational meeting, a screening call, or an interview, a real job interview, within 24 hours. You want to say, yes, the first paragraph, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about X position at Y company. As we discussed, I can provide you with the following skills. Here's an example of what we can do. You also want to say in another paragraph what you learned about the company. I'm very impressed with what you do with such and such, and this is what I learned at this interview, and this is how I can help you solve that problem. So you want to show that you listened, you learned something, and you can now apply your skill set to what their issues are at the company. And then at the end, you say, I am certain I can make a significant contribution to meeting your bottom line or to meeting your mission, and I welcome the opportunity for further discussion, period. You send that within 24 hours. And if you don't hear within a week, you send something again with new information, more information. But you must follow up with the company if you don't hear from them. If you have an interview with more than one person at a time, like this, 2 people are interviewing you, or 4 or 5 or 6, you need to send each person a separate email. And you need to tailor the email to that person. So during the interview, you might want to take some notes, not a lot. Mr. Joe Smith talked about this. Miss Nancy Driver talked about that. And so that when you follow up, you can say something specific. It shows you were listening about what that person said. There you go.
Well, and one little trick too, if Paul was the person I was emailing back and forth and I see Paul is pgeiger@yourcompany.com, then I know I can do Amy Geffen at yourcompany.com. They all have this similar structure when it comes to an email, people.
Exactly.
So let me ask you this. Is there anything wrong with saying, and by the way, when you asked this question, I forgot to remember, I forgot to talk about this type of thing. One more thing to maybe help sell yourself a little bit that you maybe thought about afterwards, because some people feel a little bit of a pressure while they're in the interview.
Absolutely. The follow-up email is an opportunity for you to go over something you may have answered incorrectly or poorly, or you weren't happy with. So you can say, oh, and I can add this to this. Or maybe you forgot to mention something very important. You can put that in the follow-up. So this follow-up is super, super important. It's another opportunity for you to enhance your candidacy, to compete against the other people who are going for the same position.
All right, let's pull a little bit of video technology into it. Is there an advantage to making that a video reply? In other words, put together a small Loom video, something like that you can send to them? Or is that taboo to send a link like that in that follow-up email?
I haven't had my clients do that or ask for it, but certainly I would think it would be interesting, and it's another way for people to learn about you. Depends how much time people have. So what do you think?
Keep it short. I would say you could definitely do it, because it is another opportunity. And we talked about this all the time, Glenn, how much video is becoming more and more the norm in terms of communicating.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where you have to read the room. You need to see who you're sending it to, and are they technologically inclined? If they're, I would say, average to technologically inclined, they're going to appreciate it. If there's someone that's not into video, they may be thinking, this smart, why is that, what's trying to do something funny. So again, look at who your audience is.
Yeah, good point.
So we're just about to wrap things up here. Let's get to the main part of all of this. When Paul says, Glenn, I would like to make you an offer, let's start talking about what I enjoy the most, and that's negotiation. So what do you recommend to people when we get the offer, and what do they all need to look at as far as the scope of the offer and how they go back and negotiate because, we never get what we deserve. We always get what we negotiate.
Exactly. So first of all, you need to have researched what's the general, if they haven't told you what the salary range is, you need to have researched that salary range for that job title in that city with someone with your level of experience. And when they make an offer, you say, the offer is for salary, but you want to hear about everything else. What about medical, dental, vision? What about helping with mortgage payments? What about relocation? What about paying for training? What about paying to go to conferences? I have a list of maybe 20 different benefits that are possible. You as a candidate need to decide, what must I have? What do I need? And what would be nice to have, but okay, not as important. And so when you go into negotiation, you can ask for things first that are less important. So you may get a no until you get to the most important things. And then no matter what you get offered, whatever that salary range is, you say, I'm really excited about this. Give me 24 hours. Let's make an appointment and we'll talk about it tomorrow. You can say yes to the job, but not to the salary. You want to think about it for 24 hours. And no matter what they give you, the next day, 24 hours later, or if it's on a Friday, you do it for Monday. You say, I've done my research and the salary is, it's in the ballpark, but not for someone with what I can offer you. What can you do for me? Again, you don't give them a number. You want to see if they're willing to go up, because the first person who gives the number is going to lose. So if you as a candidate tell them, I want this, well, then that's it. You're locked out of negotiating. Negotiating is a give and take, not only with the salary, also with all the benefits.
Mm-hmm. And you know what, Glenn? I still, to this day, I hear the words of Kate Dixon, who was on our show several months ago, the 7 magic negotiating words. What kind of flexibility do you have?
I love that. That's a great thing. What kind of flexibility do you have?
What kind of flexibility do you have? Kate is a negotiating genius just for giving us those 7 words. So, it makes all the difference.
I think the most important thing Amy just said there is take a day. So whether you like it, whether you don't like it, don't make an immediate reaction. Take some time to think it and digest, because you're going to think of things afterwards that you're not thinking about right now. Don't let them see your disgust when they offer you less than what you think you're worth. So take some time. Always take some time.
You know what? That would explain why when I asked Amy to be on the show, she didn't get back to me for 2 days.
She let you sit there and stew for a little bit.
But I'm glad you were here today, Amy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Glenn, and thank you, Paul, for this opportunity. I love to talk about this and help as many people as I can find the job of their dreams.
Well, that's pretty obvious. We have covered an enormous amount of territory. Right, Glenn?
Amen. Thank you very much, Amy. If anyone would want to reach out to you and contact you, what's the best way to do so?
The best way is to send me an email, GeffenA108. I can put it into the chat. GeffenA108@gmail.com, or call me 347-853-4616. And there you go.
What is your website? Geffen Careers. There it is.
GeffenCareers.com.
Got it. Cool.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, Amy, once again. And
thank you.
I tell you, we're off to a really crazy, great start here in 2022, Glenn.
Amen. Thank you again, Amy. Everyone, we'll see you back here, same time, same channels. Take care.
Thank you. Bye now.